The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor flickered above Catherine Davenport, each pulse a merciless beat, counting down to a surgery she would face alone. Miles away in a Hamptons beach house, warmed by a roaring fire and illicit passion, her husband Sebastian Vance made his choice. He silenced his phone, the screen flashing, "My wife," and turned back to the woman in his arms. He chose champagne over sterile gowns, whispered lies over desperate pleas. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's the story of how one woman's darkest hour became the dawn of her power, proving that the end of a fairy tale can be the beginning of an empire. The crystal chandeliers of the Davenport Vance penthouse on Park Avenue cast a fractured diamond-like glow across the room, illuminating a life that was by all accounts perfect. Catherine Davenport, wrapped in a cashmere throw the color of cream, gazed out at the sprawling tapestry of New York City lights. From this height, the city seemed serene, a silent, glittering promise. It was an illusion, much like the serenity of her own marriage. She and Sebastian Vance had been the city's golden couple for 12 years. He was the razor-sharp CEO of Vance Global, a logistics and private equity empire he had inherited and tripled in value. She was the daughter of the old money Davenport family, known for her grace, her quiet intelligence, and her pivotal role on the boards of 3 major city charities. Their union wasn't just a marriage, it was a merger of legacy and ambition, a dynasty celebrated in the glossy pages of society magazines. Tonight, however, the silence in their opulent home was heavy, punctuated only by the distant wail of a siren. Sebastian was late. Again. The excuse delivered via a clipped text message an hour ago was a familiar one. Closing the Axiom deal. Don't wait up. Catherine ran a hand over the cool marble of the fireplace mantel, her fingers tracing the edges of a silver-framed photo. It was from their 10th anniversary trip to Lake Como. In the picture, Sebastian's arm was wrapped tightly around her, his smile wide and genuine, his eyes a startling deep blue, fixed on her. She remembered the warmth of the Italian sun, the taste of Prosecco on her lips, the feeling of absolute security in his embrace. Where had that man gone? The man who came home these days was a phantom. He was physically present, but emotionally absent, his mind always elsewhere. His phone, once left carelessly on the nightstand, was now perpetually face down or in his pocket. Business trips had doubled. Late nights at the office were the norm. When she tried to talk to him, to bridge the growing chasm between them, he would placate her with gifts, a Cartier bracelet, a rare first-edition book she'd once mentioned wanting. He was trying to buy her silence to adorn their gilded cage until she forgot it was a prison. She knew, in the way a person knows a storm is coming, long before the sky darkens, that there was someone else. She had no proof, no name, no face. There was only an instinct, a cold dread that coiled in her stomach whenever he looked at his phone, and a faint, unidentifiable perfume she sometimes caught on his suit jackets. A sudden, searing pain shot through her lower right abdomen, so sharp and intense it stole her breath. She gasped, doubling over and clutching her side. It felt like a hot knife twisting inside her. She pressed her palm against the spot, willing it to subside. Maybe it was just a cramp, a strange muscle pull. She breathed deeply, waiting for it to pass. The pain receded to a dull, throbbing ache, but a wave of nausea washed over her. She straightened up slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was rarely ill. Her body was a well-oiled machine, disciplined by years of Pilates and a meticulously healthy diet. This was different. This was aggressive and alarming. She walked unsteadily to the kitchen, the polished marble floor cool beneath her bare feet. She poured a glass of water, her hand trembling slightly. As she drank, another wave of pain, more vicious than the first, buckled her knees. She cried out, dropping the glass. It shattered on the floor, the sound echoing unnervingly in the cavernous apartment. Panic began to set in. This wasn't a cramp. This was a medical emergency. She crawled to the living room, her breath coming in shallow pants, and grabbed her phone from the sofa. The throbbing in her abdomen was now a constant agonizing pulse. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead. Her first instinct, her only instinct, was to call Sebastian. He was her husband, her partner, her emergency contact. He would drop everything. He had to. She scrolled through her contacts, her vision blurring slightly, and pressed his name. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Her hope dwindled with each unanswered ring. Finally, it went to voicemail. "You've reached Sebastian Vance. I'm unavailable at the moment. Please leave a message." Tears of pain and frustration welled in her eyes. "Sebastian," she whispered into the phone, her voice strained. "Something's wrong. The pain, it's really bad. I think I need to go to the hospital. Please call me back." She hung up and tried again and again. Each call was a fresh wave of rejection, each trip to voicemail a confirmation of her deepest fears. He wasn't just unavailable, he was ignoring her. Another spasm of pain, the worst yet, ripped through her. She let out a small scream, curling into a ball on the expensive Persian rug. The city lights outside blurred into a cruel mockery of her life, bright, beautiful, and impossibly far away. She was alone, utterly and completely alone in her perfect gilded cage, and the walls were closing in. With a surge of desperate clarity, she realized she couldn't wait for a savior who wasn't coming. She scrolled to another name, her thumb shaking so badly she could barely press the screen. Olivia Grant, her best friend since college, the one person who had never let her down. The phone barely completed a full ring before Olivia's warm, concerned voice filled the line. "Kat, what's wrong? You sound awful." "Livy," Catherine gasped the word torn from her throat. "Help me. I need to get to the hospital. Now." Olivia Grant arrived in under 15 minutes, a whirlwind of frantic energy and fierce loyalty. She used her emergency key to let herself into the penthouse, her eyes widening at the sight of Catherine, pale and crumpled, on the floor amidst the shards of broken glass. "Oh my God, Kat!" Olivia rushed to her side, her chic evening attire forgotten. "What is it? What happened?" "My side," Catherine managed, pointing to her lower abdomen. I can't even describe it." Olivia, ever the pragmatist, didn't waste a second. Her hands were already dialing 911. "Appendicitis, maybe?" she guessed, her voice steady as she relayed their address and Catherine's symptoms to the operator. "Hang in there, Kat. Help is on the way. Where's Sebastian?" The name hung in the air like a poisoned dart. Catherine's face crumpled. "I tried," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "He didn't answer." Olivia's expression hardened. A protective fury sparked in her eyes, but she held her tongue. Now was not the time. She smoothed Catherine's hair back from her sweaty forehead. "Forget him. I'm here. We're going to get through this." The paramedics were efficient and professional. They assessed Catherine quickly, their questions gentle but firm. As they loaded her onto the gurney, Catherine's phone, clutched in her hand, suddenly buzzed. Her heart leaped, with a desperate, foolish hope. It was a text from Sebastian. "Just saw your voicemail. So sorry can't get away. This Axiom deal is at a critical juncture. Take an Uber to the ER if you feel you must. I'll check in later. Let me know what the docs say." Catherine stared at the message, the words blurring through her pain. Take an Uber. If you feel you must. The clinical detachment, the sheer callousness of it, was a physical blow almost as painful as the agony in her side. He wasn't just busy. He was dismissing her, treating her life-or-death fear as a minor inconvenience. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. As the paramedics wheeled her out of the apartment she had so painstakingly turned into a home. The home her husband couldn't be bothered to leave a critical meeting for. Olivia saw the text over her shoulder, and a low, guttural sound of rage escaped her lips. She squeezed Catherine's hand, a silent promise of future retribution. The ambulance ride was a jarring, surreal journey through the city's glittering veins. Through the back window, Catherine watched the familiar skyline recede. Each bump in the road sent a fresh jolt of agony through her body. At Lenox Hill Hospital, the emergency room was a chaotic symphony of beeping machines, hurried voices, and the raw, undisguised scent of antiseptic and human suffering. Catherine was fast-tracked, her symptoms too severe to ignore. A whirlwind of doctors and nurses descended. An IV was inserted, blood was drawn, and she was whisked away for an ultrasound and a CT scan. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a sharp-eyed surgeon with a calming demeanor, delivered the verdict. "Mrs. Vance, you have acute appendicitis, and it's already ruptured," she said, her tone serious but not alarmist. "That means the infection is spreading into your abdominal cavity, a condition called peritonitis. It's very serious. We need to get you into surgery immediately to clean everything out." Surgery. The word landed with terrifying finality. Catherine's mind reeled. She thought of the consent forms, the risks, the anesthesia. And she thought of Sebastian. He should be here. He should be the one holding her hand, listening to the doctor, telling her it would all be okay. "My husband," she began, her voice cracking. "Is there time to call him?" Dr. Reed gave her a sympathetic look. "We really can't wait, Catherine. Time is critical with peritonitis. Your friend is in the waiting room. We can have her notify him." Olivia was brought in. Her face was a mask of concern, but her voice was a rock. "I'm right here, Kat. Whatever you need." "Livy, can you try Sebastian one more time?" Catherine pleaded, clinging to a last shred of hope. "Tell him it's surgery. Tell him it's ruptured. He has to come." Olivia nodded, stepping out into the hallway. Catherine could hear her friend's muffled but furious voice. "Sebastian, it's Olivia. Catherine is being taken into emergency surgery right now. Her appendix ruptured. The doctor said it's life-threatening. You need to get to Lenox Hill immediately." There was a pause. Catherine strained to hear, her entire being focused on the outcome of that call. She heard Olivia's voice rise in disbelief. "What do you mean you can't? What deal could possibly be more important than your wife's life? That is the most pathetic, disgusting excuse I have ever heard. Don't you dare hang up on me." Olivia came back into the room, her face pale with a rage so profound it left her speechless for a moment. She didn't need to say a word. The answer was written in the fury in her eyes. He wasn't coming. The critical Axiom deal was his final, unbreakable alibi, a wall he had built between his two lives. A profound, bone-deep cold settled over Catherine, a chill that had nothing to do with the hospital air. The betrayal was absolute. It eclipsed the physical pain, eclipsing even the fear of the surgery itself. In that moment, something inside her broke. The soft, hopeful part of her that had been making excuses for him for months finally shattered. As the orderlies came to wheel her gurney toward the operating room, she looked at the empty space beside her where her husband should have been. She was facing this alone. The vows they had taken in sickness and in health were just words, meaningless echoes in the sterile hallway. Her life was on the line, and she was less important than a business deal. The last thing she saw before the anesthesia pulled her under was Olivia's tear-streaked, fiercely loyal face. And the last thought that drifted through her mind was not one of love for her husband, but a single chilling question: where was he really? Meanwhile, miles away in a sprawling, glass-walled beach house in the Hamptons, Sebastian Vance clicked his phone off and tossed it onto a grey cashmere sofa. The Axiom deal was a fiction, a convenient lie. The real deal was standing in front of him, her silhouette framed by the roaring fire. Chloe Jensen, a sleek and ambitious art gallery curator, with eyes the color of whiskey and a smile that could disarm armies, ran a finger down his chest. "Everything okay, Seb?" She murmured, her voice like honey. "Just work," he lied smoothly, pulling her close and inhaling her expensive floral perfume, the one Catherine could never identify. "A minor crisis. It's handled." He kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss, meant to erase the last lingering shred of guilt. Catherine's panicked voicemail, Olivia's furious accusations, they were distant noise static from a world he was determined to leave behind. He had made his choice. As his wife was being cut open on an operating table, he was here in the arms of another woman, believing he was in control. He had no idea that this single, cold-hearted decision was the fulcrum on which his entire world was about to pivot and collapse. Catherine awoke to a gentle, persistent beeping and the muted hum of hospital machinery. Her first sensation was a dull, expansive ache across her abdomen, a stark reminder of the ordeal her body had endured. The second was the heavy, crushing weight of reality. She was alive, and she was still alone. She blinked her eyes, slowly adjusting to the soft light of the private recovery room. Olivia was asleep, in an armchair by the window, her head lolled to one side, her phone resting on her lap. Seeing her friend there, a sentinel who had refused to leave her post, brought a lump to Catherine's throat. Dr. Reed came in shortly after, her smile warm and reassuring. "Welcome back, Catherine," she said softly. "The surgery went well. It was a nasty case of peritonitis, but we were able to clean out the infection thoroughly. You'll be with us for a few days for IV antibiotics and observation, but the worst is over. You're going to make a full recovery." The relief was immense, a physical wave that left her weak. "Thank you, doctor," she breathed, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for everything." "You're a strong woman," Dr. Reed replied, checking her chart. "Your husband, has he been in contact?" The question was gentle, professional, but it sliced through Catherine's fragile composure. She shook her head, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down her temple. "No, he was stuck in a business deal." The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. Dr. Reed's expression was carefully neutral, but a flicker of pity crossed her eyes. "Well, you get some rest. Olivia has my number if you need anything at all." When the doctor left, Olivia stirred and woke her eyes, instantly finding Catherine's. "Hey, you," she said, her voice thick with sleep. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was run over by a truck," Catherine admitted. "But alive. Thanks to you, Livy. I don't know what I would have done." "You would have done what you always do," Olivia said, moving to the bedside and taking her hand. "You would have handled it, but you shouldn't have had to." Her voice was laced with a quiet fury. "I called him again after you went into surgery. Left another message. He sent a text back about an hour ago." Catherine braced herself. "What did it say?" Olivia hesitated, then read from her phone. "Glad to hear it went okay. We'll try to swing by tomorrow afternoon if meetings clear up. Tell her I'm sending my love." Sending his love. Like a postcard, like a corporate memo. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. He wasn't even going to rush to her side now that the danger had passed. He would swing by if it was convenient. A cold, hard clarity began to crystallize in Catherine's mind, sharpening the edges of her grief and pain into something else entirely, something steely and resolute. The woman who had wept with fear and loneliness before the surgery was gone, cauterized by the twin fires of betrayal and survival. "Livy," Catherine said, her voice devoid of its earlier tremor. "My purse. Can you pass it to me?" Olivia handed her the designer bag, and Catherine pulled out her own phone. There were no missed calls from Sebastian. Not a single one. Just the text he had sent Olivia, forwarded for her records. As she scrolled idly through her newsfeed, a post from a vapid socialite she followed caught her eye. It was a photo album geotagged Hampton's Bliss. The lead photo was a group shot around a bonfire on a beach. And there, in the back, arm in arm with a striking brunette, was Sebastian. He was laughing, a bottle of beer in his hand, looking carefree and utterly happy. The timestamp on the photo was 11:30 p.m. last night, the exact time Catherine was being wheeled into the operating room. The brunette was Chloe Jensen. Catherine knew her vaguely from the art world, a rising star known for her sharp business acumen and her even sharper stilettos. It all clicked into place. The faint perfume, the art gallery events he suddenly had to attend, the late nights, the Hamptons, the Axiom deal wasn't a contract, it was a person. Catherine showed the phone to Olivia. Olivia stared at it, her jaw tightening until it was a wonder her teeth didn't crack. "That son of a bitch," she hissed, her voice a low, dangerous growl. "He wasn't in a meeting. He was at a party with her while you were—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. The image burned itself onto Catherine's memory. Sebastian's laughing face, juxtaposed with the terror she had felt on the gurney. The warmth of the bonfire against the cold sterility of the OR. The passion in his eyes for another woman, while his wife's life hung in the balance. For a long moment, Catherine said nothing. She simply stared at the photo, the digital proof of his ultimate betrayal. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. The time for that was over. The pain in her heart was now being forged into something else. It was a quiet, glacial rage, a resolve as cold and hard as steel. He hadn't just cheated on her. He had abandoned her at her most vulnerable. He had valued a night of pleasure over her very life. He had looked at her suffering and decided it was an inconvenience. "Livy," Catherine said, her voice calm and measured in a way that scared even herself. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to find the name of the best divorce attorney in New York City. Not just good, the best, a shark, someone utterly ruthless." Olivia looked at her, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. The grief in her eyes was replaced by a glint of battle-ready excitement. "I know just the man," she said, "Alistair Finch. He doesn't just handle divorces, he dismantles empires." "Perfect," Catherine replied, setting her phone down on the bedside table. "Book me a consultation for the day I'm discharged. Sebastian Vance is about to find out what a critical juncture really looks like." The awakening was complete. It wasn't just an awakening from anesthesia, but an awakening from a 12-year-long slumber. The woman lying in that hospital bed was no longer just Catherine Davenport, the society wife. She was Catherine Davenport, a survivor, and she was about to go to war. The days in the hospital were a strange cocoon of healing and plotting. The physical pain in Catherine's abdomen gradually subsided, replaced by the thrumming energy of her newfound purpose. Every dose of antibiotics felt like it was purging not just the infection from her body, but also the last vestiges of the naive woman she had been. Sebastian did as promised. Swing by. He arrived on the third day, striding into her room, with a bouquet of expensive but impersonal lilies and a look of practiced concern on his face. "Darling," he said, leaning in to kiss her forehead. She flinched almost imperceptibly. "You look better. I was so worried. This Axiom deal has been an absolute monster. I barely slept." Catherine looked at him. Truly looked at him for the first time since her awakening. She saw the lie in his eyes, the carefully constructed facade. She noted the faint tan on his skin, a Hampton's souvenir. The rage was still there, a cold, hard knot in her chest, but she cloaked it in a guise of weary gratitude. This was a chess game now, and she would not show her hand until she was ready for checkmate. "Thank you for coming, Sebastian," she said, her voice intentionally weak. "It was scary." "Of course," he said, taking her hand. His touch felt alien. "I'm just glad you're okay. The moment things calm down at work, I'll take you away somewhere. Anywhere you want to go. We need to reconnect." The hypocrisy was so profound, it was almost artistic. He spoke of reconnecting while she knew he had been actively severing their connection in the most brutal way possible. She played her part, offering a faint smile. "I'd like that." He stayed for a stilted 20 minutes, checking his watch 3 times before making his excuses. "I have to run. Board pre-briefing. But I'll have the driver pick you up tomorrow when you're discharged. The house is ready for you. Just rest." The moment he left, Catherine's placid mask fell away. Olivia, who had been waiting in the hallway, walked back in. "I wanted to key his Porsche," she muttered. "Patience, Livy," Catherine said, her eyes glinting. "The Porsche will be the least of his worries." The next day, Catherine was discharged. She walked out of Lenox Hill Hospital, not as a victim returning home to lick her wounds, but as a general leaving a field hospital to plan her campaign. She had the driver take her not to the Park Avenue penthouse, but to a discreet 5-star hotel where Olivia had booked her a suite under her maiden name. The penthouse was no longer her home. It was enemy territory. That afternoon, she met with Alistair Finch. Finch's office was a study in minimalist power, dark wood, brushed steel, and a panoramic view of Central Park. The man himself was just as formidable. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair, piercing grey eyes, and a bespoke suit that probably cost more than her hospital stay. He listened without interruption as Catherine laid out the story. She was concise, factual, and devoid of tears. She told him about the 12-year marriage, Sebastian's increasing distance, the emergency surgery, the ignored calls, the Axiom deal, and the damning photograph from the Hamptons. When she finished, Finch leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Mrs. Vance, or may I call you Catherine, this is a textbook case of emotional abandonment and infidelity. Grounds for divorce are more than established. The question is, what do you want?" "I want what I'm entitled to," Catherine said, her voice firm. "But more than that, I want to understand. This wasn't just a fling. Sebastian isn't careless. He's meticulous. To risk everything so blatantly, it feels like there's more to it." Finch's eyes gleamed with professional interest. "I agree. Men like your husband don't typically behave this recklessly unless there's a larger prize in play or they believe they're completely untouchable. Often, it's both. The prenuptial agreement you signed is quite robust, but it has clauses pertaining to infidelity and gross misconduct, which we can certainly leverage. My father insisted on those clauses, Catherine recalled. He had been a shrewd man. A wise man, Finch corrected. We'll start with a full forensic accounting of your and your husband's assets, both personal and shared. My team will be discreet. We'll look for unusual financial movements, new accounts, large gifts, anything that deviates from his established patterns over the past year. He paused, his gaze sharp. This can be a long and brutal process, Catherine. He will fight back, and he will fight dirty. Are you prepared for that? Catherine thought of the cold loneliness of the hospital gurney, of Sebastian's laughing face in that photograph. She thought of his casual dismissal of her terror. "Mr. Finch," she said, meeting his gaze without blinking. "I survived peritonitis alone in the middle of the night. I assure you I can survive my husband." A rare thin smile touched Alistair Finch's lips. "Excellent," he said. "Then let's get to work." For the next 2 weeks, Catherine lived in the hotel suite, which became her war room. She directed her life with military precision. She informed a stunned Sebastian via text that she was staying with her mother upstate to fully recuperate, a lie to buy her time and space. He accepted it easily, likely relieved to have the penthouse to himself. Days were spent on encrypted calls with Finch's team of forensic accountants. They walked her through spreadsheets and bank statements, teaching her to see the hidden narrative in the numbers. At first, it was a blur of figures, but soon, patterns began to emerge. Small transfers at first, then larger ones. Funds moved from a joint investment account to a holding company she'd never heard of. A shell corporation, Finch explained, registered in Delaware. The numbers told a story of methodical deception. It had started 10 months ago. Tens of thousands of dollars, then hundreds of thousands siphoned away into the corporate ghost. The accountants found the final destination of the funds. They had been used to purchase a controlling interest in a small but highly innovative green energy logistics firm. A company, Vance Global, had been rumored to be interested in acquiring. The new majority shareholder of that firm, a recently formed LLC. The sole director of that LLC was listed as one Chloe Jensen. Catherine stared at the document on her encrypted tablet, the flowchart of deceit laid out in stark black and white. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just about sex or passion. It was a conspiracy. Sebastian was using their money to set his mistress up in business, positioning her to become a major player in his own industry. It was a brazen, calculated betrayal on a scale she could never have imagined. The new resolve hardened into something diamond-hard within her. This was no longer just about a broken heart and a failed marriage. This was about the theft of her future, the plundering of a legacy her own family's money had helped secure. Sebastian and his mistress weren't just trying to build a new life. They were trying to build it with her money on the foundations of her family's name. She picked up the phone and dialed Alistair Finch. "We have him," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "But I don't just want a divorce settlement. I want to hit him where he'll feel it most. I want to hit the company." Alistair Finch's enthusiasm for the case grew exponentially with the discovery of the financial malfeasance. "This changes everything, Catherine," he explained over a secure video call, his face lit by the glow of his monitor. "This is no longer a simple, albeit high-asset divorce. This is corporate fraud. He has breached his fiduciary duty, not only to you as his spouse, but potentially to Vance Global's shareholders by using joint assets to fund a competitor or at least a future business partner without disclosure. What does that mean for us? Catherine asked, her pen poised over a legal pad in her hotel suite. The room was littered with financial reports and corporate charters. She was learning a new language, the language of power and money, and she was proving to be a quick study. It means we have leverage that goes far beyond the bedroom, Finch said, a predatory glint in his eye. We can expose this. The hint of a scandal could tank Vance Global's stock price and trigger a board inquiry. Sebastian values his reputation and his control over the company above all else. The threat of losing that will be far more terrifying to him than any divorce settlement. They delved deeper. Finch's team, a collection of digital bloodhounds, traced the origins of Chloe Jensen. She wasn't just an art gallery curator. Her resume before her sudden foray into the art world included a junior analyst position at a rival private equity firm, one that had competed with Vance Global on several deals. She was smart, she was strategic, and she clearly had ambition that extended far beyond selling paintings. She wasn't just his mistress, Catherine mused aloud, connecting the dots. She was his business project, or maybe he was hers. The puzzle was taking shape, but one piece was missing: the motive. Why the elaborate deception? Why set Chloe up in this specific green logistics firm? Vance Global could have acquired it with petty cash. Why the shell companies and the secrecy? The answer came from the most unexpected of sources. One evening, an encrypted email with an unfamiliar address landed in Catherine's inbox. The subject line was a single word: urgent. Catherine's heart pounded as she opened it. Mrs. Vance. Catherine, you don't know me well, but I am Sebastian's sister Madeline. I know what my brother has done. I know about Miss Jensen, and I know about the financial arrangements. I cannot stand by and watch him destroy everything our father built and destroy you in the process. There is more you need to know. The plan is much bigger than you think. If you are willing to speak, I can provide the context you are missing. I am on your side. Madeline Vance. Catherine was stunned. She remembered Madeline as the quiet, bookish younger sister, often overshadowed by Sebastian's aggressive charisma. They had always been friendly at family gatherings, sharing a quiet bond over their mutual love for historical novels. Catherine had always sensed a deep integrity in the younger woman. After consulting with Finch, who vetted the email and confirmed its likely authenticity, Catherine agreed to a discreet meeting. They chose a small, forgotten tea room in the West Village, a place neither of them would ever be seen. Madeline was nervous, her hands trembling as she clutched her teacup. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "I feel like such a traitor." "You're not a traitor for seeking the truth, Madeline," Catherine said gently. Madeline took a deep breath, and the story tumbled out. "Sebastian has changed," she said, her eyes filled with a sad disappointment. "Our father always taught us that the business was a legacy, a responsibility. But for Seb, it's become a game about winning at all costs. For the past year, he's been obsessed with launching a new, high-tech, sustainable logistics division within Vance Global. He sees it as the future, his mark on the world." "I remember him mentioning it," Catherine said. "The Vance Terra project." "Exactly," Madeline confirmed. "But the board is conservative. They've been pushing back, demanding more proof of concept, worried about the massive initial investment. They see it as a vanity project, especially my uncle, who holds a significant block of shares and sits on the board. He's been Seb's biggest obstacle." She leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. That's where Chloe Jensen comes in. Seb's plan wasn't just to set her up in business. His plan was to use her company as a supposedly independent success story. He's been feeding her inside information, helping her land key contracts that should have gone to Vance Global. The idea is to build her company up, show staggering growth, and then have Vance Global acquire it for a huge sum. And in doing so, he proves to the board that the sector is profitable, justifying his larger Vance Terra project. Catherine finished, the sheer audacity of the scheme dawning on her. He would be hailed as a genius, a visionary. Worse, Madeline added, her expression grim. The acquisition would be for an inflated price, a price that would line Chloe Jensen's pockets with tens of millions of dollars, money that originated in part from your joint marital assets. It's a closed loop of fraud. He's essentially using the company's money and your money to pay his mistress and consolidate his own power. It was all there, the web of lies, breathtaking in its complexity and cold-bloodedness. The affair wasn't an emotional lapse. It was a business transaction. Her emergency surgery hadn't been an inconvenient interruption to a tryst. It had been an inconvenient interruption to a multi-million-dollar conspiracy. "Why are you telling me this, Madeline?" Catherine asked quietly, though she already suspected the answer. "Because he's using our father's legacy as his personal slush fund. And because he did to you what he did to my mother years ago, he abandoned someone who loved him when they needed him most. My father had an affair, you know. My mother found out, and it broke her. Seb saw it all. I always thought he despised our father for it, but he didn't. He was just taking notes." Madeline opened her briefcase and slid a slim file across the table. "My father left me his shares in the company, but he gave Sebastian the voting rights, the proxy, until my 30th birthday, which is next year. However, the trust document has a clause. The proxy reverts to me immediately if the CEO is found to be engaged in gross misconduct or actions detrimental to the company's financial health. What you and Mr. Finch have uncovered, it's more than enough to invoke that clause." Catherine looked at the file, then back at Madeline. In her quiet, nervous sister-in-law, she had found her most powerful weapon. Madeline didn't just have information, she held the key to Sebastian's power. "The annual shareholders' meeting is in 10 days, Madeline said. Sebastian plans to announce the acquisition of Chloe Jensen's company then. He thinks it's his triumphant moment." A cold, determined smile touched Catherine's lips. "He's right," she said. "It will be a triumphant moment, just not for him." The war room was no longer about divorce. It was about a corporate takeover. Catherine Olivia Alastair Finch and now Madeline Vance formed an unlikely but formidable alliance. They would let Sebastian walk into that meeting, believing he was the king, unaware that the women he had underestimated were about to dismantle his kingdom brick by fraudulent brick. The day of the Vance Global Annual Shareholders Meeting was grey and overcast, the sky over Manhattan the color of slate. It suited Catherine's mood perfectly, cool, controlled, and anticipating a storm. She stood before the full-length mirror in her hotel suite, not as Catherine Vance, the society wife who favored soft pastels and flowing silks, but as Catherine Davenport. She wore a bespoke charcoal gray suit, the tailoring sharp and severe. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, commanding chignon. Her only jewelry was a pair of simple diamond studs, her father's last gift to her. She looked every bit the formidable woman she had become. Olivia stood beside her, holding a leather portfolio. "You look like you're about to own the world," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I'm just taking back what's mine," Catherine replied, her gaze steady in the mirror. Downstairs, a black car waited. Alistair Finch was already inside, reviewing his notes one last time. Madeline would meet them there. She had to attend the first part of the meeting as a simple observer to avoid raising suspicion. The plan was audacious, timed to the minute. Finch had through back channels alerted two influential board members, allies of Madeline's uncle, that an issue of critical fiduciary importance would be raised. He hadn't given details, just enough to ensure they wouldn't dismiss the interruption. Catherine walked into the Vance Global Tower, a building she had last entered for a Christmas party, feeling like a stranger. The energy was electric. Men and women in expensive suits bustled through the lobby, their faces a mixture of ambition and anxiety. She, Finch, and Olivia were escorted to a small waiting room adjacent to the main boardroom, their presence known only to a trusted assistant of Madeline's. Inside the boardroom, Sebastian Vance was at the height of his power. He stood at the head of a massive mahogany table, commanding the room with his signature blend of charm and authority. He delivered a glowing report on the company's performance, his voice resonating with confidence. "Which brings me to my final point," he announced, a triumphant gleam in his eye. "The future. As you know, I have long championed our entry into the sustainable logistics sector. While this board has wisely urged caution, an opportunity has arisen that is simply too perfect to ignore." He clicked a button, and the large screen behind him lit up with the logo of Chloe Jensen's company, Synergia Logistics. "Synergia is a marvel of innovation and efficiency," Sebastian declared, launching into his pre-prepared speech. "In less than a year, they have secured major contracts and posted growth that has stunned the industry. They are the key to unlocking the future. Therefore, I am proud to announce that the board has approved in principle the acquisition of Synergia Logistics for the sum of $90 million. This move will fast-track our Vance Terra division and position Vance Global as the undisputed leader in green logistics for the next 50 years. He paused for effect, expecting applause. He got it, a ripple of polite clapping from most of the board. His uncle, however, looked skeptical. "Sebastian," the uncle interjected, "$90 million is a steep price for a company that didn't exist a year ago. The due diligence is impeccable," Sebastian cut in smoothly, "and the principal owner, a brilliant innovator named Chloe Jensen, will be joining Vance Global to oversee the integration." He was beaming. It was his crowning achievement. At that moment, the doors to the boardroom opened. A junior executive scurried in and whispered something to Sebastian. His brow furrowed in annoyance. "What is it? I'm in the middle of a presentation." "I'm sorry, sir," the executive stammered. "But it's your wife. She insists it's a matter of board-level urgency." A collective murmur went through the room. Sebastian's face paled slightly, then flushed with anger. What was she doing here? He shot a look at his sister, but Madeline's expression was perfectly neutral. "This is highly inappropriate," he hissed. "Tell her I'll—" "That won't be necessary, Sebastian." Catherine's voice, calm and clear, cut through the room. She swept in, flanked by Alistair Finch. Her presence was so unexpected, so powerful, that it silenced the entire room. Sebastian stared at her, his mouth slightly agape. This was not the weak, recuperating woman he had visited in the hospital. This was a stranger. "Catherine, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice tight with fury and embarrassment. "I believe you're discussing the acquisition of Synergia Logistics," Catherine said, her voice cool as ice. She walked slowly towards the table, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of the board members. "I'm here to provide some crucial missing information for your due diligence." Alistair Finch stepped forward, placing a set of bound documents at each board member's seat. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alistair Finch. I represent Catherine Davenport. These documents contain a full forensic accounting of a shell corporation, JC Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware." Sebastian's blood ran cold. He knew that name. "You will find," Finch continued, his voice resonating with legal authority, "that JC Holdings was funded exclusively by transfers from a joint marital account belonging to Mr. and Mrs. Vance to the tune of $1.2 million without Mrs. Vance's knowledge or consent. You will also find that these funds were then used to purchase the controlling interest in Synergia Logistics." Gasps echoed around the room. Sebastian felt the floor drop out from beneath him. "The sole director of JC Holdings," Catherine added, her eyes locked on her husband's, "is Chloe Jensen. The same Chloe Jensen you are proposing to pay $90 million. In effect, Sebastian, you have used our family's money, and by extension, the company's resources, through diverted opportunities, to build a company that you now propose this board should buy back at an 8,000% markup. It's not an acquisition. It's a money laundering scheme to enrich your mistress." The word mistress landed like a grenade, shattering the corporate decorum into a million pieces. Sebastian was speechless, his face a mask of horror. He looked from Catherine's cold, unforgiving face to the damning documents in front of the board. His uncle slammed his hand on the table. "Sebastian, is this true?" Before he could formulate a denial, Madeline Vance stood up. "It is," she said, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. "As a result of this gross financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty, I am, as per the terms of our father's trust, immediately revoking my proxy vote from Sebastian and reclaiming my seat and voting rights on this board. Effective now." It was the kill shot. Madeline's block of shares, combined with her uncle's, created a new majority. Sebastian's power had evaporated in an instant. He stared at his sister, then at his wife, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He had been so focused on his game, he had never once considered the pawns could stage a coup. Catherine looked at the man she had once loved, now reduced to a stammering, exposed fraud. There was no triumph in her heart, only a quiet, sad finality. She had not come here for revenge. She had come for justice. "The acquisition is dead, Sebastian," his uncle stated, his voice like granite. "And we will be tabling an immediate vote of no confidence in your leadership. I suggest you resign. Now." Sebastian Vance, the king of Vance, Global, the master of the universe, simply stood there, utterly broken, as the empire he valued more than his wife was dismantled before his very eyes. Catherine turned without a backward glance and walked out of the boardroom, leaving the ruins of her old life behind her. The fallout from the boardroom gambit was swift and catastrophic for Sebastian. Faced with a board that had turned on him irrefutable evidence of fraud and the public humiliation of his affair being laid bare, he had no choice but to resign. The scandal was contained before it hit the press, some as a sudden retirement for personal reasons. But within the closed circles of New York's elite, the truth spread like wildfire. The divorce was not a battle, it was a surrender. With the evidence Catherine and Finch had compiled, Sebastian's position was untenable. He was desperate to avoid a public court case that would expose the full extent of his deceit. The settlement was heavily, almost overwhelmingly, in Catherine's favor. She didn't just get what the prenup stipulated. She received a significant portion of his personal shares in Vance Global as compensation for the fraudulent use of their marital assets. The penthouse, the art collection, the life they had built it, was all hers now. Sebastian, stripped of his company, his reputation, and a vast portion of his wealth, retreated from the city. The last Catherine heard, he and Chloe Jensen had moved to a smaller city in the Midwest, their grand plans of a corporate empire reduced to a life of quiet ignominy. The $90 million payday had vanished, and with it, apparently so, had Chloe's affection. Their love, built on a foundation of shared greed, could not survive the collapse of their fortunes. But Catherine's story was not about his fall. It was about her rise. In the months that followed, she shed the last remnants of her old life, like a snake sheds its skin. She sold the cavernous Park Avenue penthouse, its gilded cage now holding too many ghosts. She moved into a chic, light-filled apartment in Soho that was all her own, filled with art she chose and books she loved. With Madeline Vance, now a powerful voice on the board, and her uncle as the interim CEO, Vance Global underwent a quiet revolution. They needed to fill the void Sebastian had left, not just in leadership, but in vision. And they turned to the woman who had exposed the rot at its core. Catherine, armed with her newfound shares and the Davenport name that still commanded immense respect, was offered a seat on the board. She accepted. She threw herself into the work with the same meticulous energy she had once devoted to charity galas. She devoured reports, learned the intricacies of global logistics, and brought a fresh, ethical perspective that the company desperately needed. Her focus turned to the Vance Terra project, the sustainable division that had been the catalyst for Sebastian's entire scheme. But where he had seen it as a vehicle for greed, she saw genuine potential. Working alongside Madeline, Catherine championed a restructured, transparent, and genuinely innovative green logistics initiative. She used her deep connections in the nonprofit world to forge partnerships with environmental groups, ensuring the project had integrity, not just the appearance of it. Her defining moment came a year after the divorce was finalized. At the next annual shareholders' meeting in the same boardroom where she had once been an intruder, Catherine Davenport stood at the podium as the newly appointed head of the Vance Terra division. She was no longer just a board member. She was an executive, a leader. She laid out a vision that was bold, profitable, and above all, honest. She had faced the coldest night of her life alone, a victim of a devastating betrayal. But she had refused to be defined by it. The pain had not broken her, it had forged her. The woman who once gazed out at the city from her husband's penthouse now looked out from her own corner office, seeing not just a tapestry of lights, but a landscape of possibilities she would conquer on her own terms. Catherine Davenport Vance was gone. In her place stood Catherine Davenport, a phoenix reborn from the ashes of a scorched earth betrayal, her wings catching the winds of a future she had built herself. She had lost a husband, but she had found her power. And in the end, it was a far greater prize than any man's love or any company's stock. She was finally, truly free. Catherine's story is a powerful reminder that our deepest betrayals can forge our greatest strengths. She walked through fire alone, not to be consumed by it, but to emerge from the ashes, reforged and unbreakable. Stripped of the life she thought she knew, she discovered the woman she was always meant to be, a leader, a strategist, and the architect of her own destiny. Her journey from a hospital bed to the head of the boardroom proves that the most devastating endings can be the start of the most triumphant beginnings. What would you have done in her position? Could you turn such a devastating blow into a launching pad for a new life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If her journey from heartbreak to head of the boardroom inspired you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this message of resilience, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas and stories of incredible strength.